Okay. Yeah, I wasn't going to make another video this evening, but I just watched this and it was just so much fun watching it. I mean, it was just hilarious. And I just thought I have to make a comment on this other Lawrence Krauss video. It's him talking about infinity, and it's very funny. It's like listening to a child making up like some kind of fairy story. Anyway, let's just listen to it.
Hopefully there's no...
Well, actually, yeah, the most horrible bit is at the beginning. This guy asks a perfectly intelligent question, and Krauss's immediate response is just to say, "You don't understand infinity. Who do you think you are? I'm so much better than you. I'm Lawrence Krauss." And he sort of has this weird, like, it looks like some kind of what do you call those dogs? Those fighting dogs, Rottweiler. So it looks like a bit like a Rottweiler that's had his face like bitten off or something. Anyway,
Stupid questions. So
they're no stupid
I'm
questions.
wondering, how do you wrestle with infinity? For example, it seems like all your thinking and what allows what it has to do with a finite amount of matter. You were talking about multi-universe
Yeah, sure.
stuff. Well, in my head, there's just one universe, all those multi.
Yeah.
Well, in a flat universe, it's infinite in spatial extent, right? Infinity is a really hard thing to wrestle with.
Yes.
And in fact, let me give you, I wrote, in one of my books I wrote about.
I mean, you can see that guy's reaction there to Krauss. Krauss just like bites his head off, like, "No, I'm going to tell you, it's a difficult thing to grapple."
Infinity, because it's so fascinating and so weird. The only way you can wrestle with infinity is, unfortunately, the way we physicists wrestle with many things, mathematically.
Well, that's not actually true, because you know, one of the things that this man despises is any type of spiritual belief. Always goes on stage with Richard Dawkins, the other enemy of spiritual truth, who's on the rampage in the world today. And actually, I think you'll find, Krauss, if you do your research, that people have actually thought about infinity for many, many hundreds, if not thousands of years. And they've done that through meditation, through mystical philosophies like the Kabbalah, like the ancient Hindu Sanskrit writings, etc. And you don't need mathematics to think about infinity. You don't need mathematics at all. This is just a sort of arrogant way that you people try to sort of prop yourself up against anyone else who has any ideas. You have this crutch to lean on, which is your mathematics. It's like you've got your mathematics, which is really complicated, and most people can't understand it. So you just get that out. It's like your first weapon of defense is, "Oh, I'm going to hide behind my mathematics. It can only be explained with mathematics," he says. It's not true. Okay? I can think about infinity when I close my eyes. I can think about infinity when I stare up at the stars. I don't need mathematics to do that. Mathematics isn't the language. I mean, you can use mathematics, of course. It's a tool for describing the universe, just as there are many other tools, like the Kabbalistic tree of life, or the I Ching, or whatever other tools you want to use to describe the universe. Mathematics is just one. And to be perfectly honest, I don't even think it's a very good one when it comes to things like infinity. It just makes you go around in circles and not really actually understand what infinity is. You get a much better idea of what infinity is by staring up at space or meditating on it for a few hours than you will by looking at a few symbols on a page. But anyway, here we go, Krauss. Come on, what have you got to say?
And fortunately or unfortunately, mathematics is the language of nature. And therefore, every time I give a talk or write a book, I have to lie a little bit, because I put it in words. The real explanation is mathematical. But infinity is so strange, you don't have any idea how strange it is. So let me make it clear to you how little you understand infinity. Okay? I'll use the example of a very famous mathematician called Hilbert, probably the most famous mathematician in the early part of this century. He almost discovered general relativity before Einstein. Hilbert gave an example. We call it Hilbert's Hotel, and I like to use it. So let's say you go to Las Vegas and there's an infinitely big hotel, okay? And you go in and you go in and say, "I want a room." And the clerk says, "Well, all the rooms are occupied." You say, okay, I'll leave. And he said, no, 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 it's okay, I can handle that. Here, let me just move the person from room number 1 into room number 2, the room number 2 into room number 3, room number 3 into room number 4, and so on. Now all the other rooms are occupied, but room number 1 is empty.
Well, this is just patently absurd and totally moronic thinking. He started off by saying there's a room with an infinite number of... a hotel with an infinite number of rooms, he said. And he said all the rooms are full. So, therefore, there is not... You can't add 1 to infinity and still have infinity. There's only one infinity. I mean, this is just the fallacy of mathematics and how idiotic it is, and how people like him who don't really understand the universe and like to pretend that they do, because they prop themselves up with these qualifications, and I've been to this university and I'm a doctor and all this, whatever, just because they regurgitate what they've been told by their superior, and they don't actually understand infinity at all. If you've got an infinite set and you know, an infinite set of rooms and they're all full, you can't add 1. You can't add a room to infinity because it's already it's already infinity. It's just illogical. It doesn't make sense, and it's just a stupid kind of pseudo-intellectual stunt to kind of talk about adding 1 to infinity. I mean, what the hell does that mean? It's ridiculous. Infinity is infinity. That's it. You can't divide infinity. You can't add to infinity. It's just infinity is just a concept. It's in terms of mathematics, it's meaningless.
Okay.
Oh, very smug, aren't you? You're so clever, aren't you, Krauss? Come on.
That seems a little strange, but let's say you have a Catholic family that's infinitely big.
Oh, little dig at Catholics. Oh, you're very witty, aren't you?
And you go to the hotel and say, I've got my infinite number of children here. I want to check in. And he says, well, the rooms are occupied. And you go, oh, okay. And no, I can handle that. I can handle your infinite family. Even though I'm fully booked, I have an infinitely big hotel. I move someone from room number 1 into room number 2, room number 2 into room number 4. I
mean, this is like a story you would tell to a little child, about a 5-year-old child or something, to help them understand it. I mean, this is not serious science. This is ridiculous. I mean, as if to say that you would get an infinite number of objects and you would shift them all one step along. I mean, it's obviously impossible. I mean, you can't talk about shifting things up by 1 when you're talking about infinity, because infinity is infinite. So you can't do that. I mean, it's just stupid. It's like anyone who thinks that you can do that is a moron. You cannot do that. You can't get... There isn't such a thing as an infinite number of things that you can all shift along 1. It doesn't exist. It's just a kind of... what do you call it? It's like a theoretical... It's something theoretical that can't exist. So... You know, and in the way he can understand it in his pea brain in there somewhere is by telling us this little child story.
Room number 3 and room number 6, and so on. And now all the even numbers are occupied. Oh, really? And all the odd numbered rooms are empty, so you have an infinite number of those.
Really?
So you see, infinity, working with infinities, is really weird, because adding and subtracting infinities produces strange things.
Yeah, because you can't do that.
In physics, we have to learn how to deal with that. The universe may be infinite. And there are many strange things. One of the...
Well, if the universe is infinite, which it almost certainly is, it's an analog system. It's not digital, like all you physicists. I mean, I'll make another video about this because this is a very interesting subject. Everyone's so excited about quantum theory these days. Quantum theory, for the last 10 years or however long, it's become like a sort of popular meme type of thing. Quantum theory, and everyone likes to jump on the bandwagon, say how great it is. Some people don't even realise, but quantum theory essentially means that everything can be reduced to quanta, to individual bits, a bit like on a computer, information or pixels on a screen. Whereas analog data is like like a sound wave. If you record a sound wave like for instance with sound, you can record sound analog, digitally, or in an analog way. The difference being a digital wave would be made up of lots of little bits. An analog wave would just be a smooth wave. So another example of an analog wave would be a light wave, or the waves on the sea, I guess. Yeah, maybe not, because you could talk about the molecules and the water, but a light wave, but or gravity wave. Not that actually there are gravity waves, but quantum physicists think that there must be a quantum particle of gravity because everything else appears to be in little packets. So they think everything must be in little packets. And that's just another sort of arrogant way of, they think that everything has to be the same. But it's not true. Space itself is not digital. It's not made of discrete little quanta. So the idea that there's an infinite number of these little pieces that stretch out to infinity is just patently absurd. It's an analog system. It's a smooth, continuous line that stretches out to infinity. It's not made of little bits. Okay, anyway, let's just listen to the more childish babble.
The most ridiculous, unfortunately, which I go to physics conferences, I was just in one in France, and this was talked about, is if the universe is infinite and infinitely old, then there's a puzzle. We're here because we evolved. But that makes us very special, apparently. Because if the universe is infinitely big and infinitely old, quantum fluctuations will produce this room with all the people in it, having everything is exactly the same, an infinite number of times. So we should be in this room, and I know it seems like it's taking an infinitely long amount of time, but we should be in this room, but most of the time, we should never have evolved. But we evolved. And that's caused some physicists to worry. I think it's a ridiculous worry, frankly, because in fact, I hate to do this. I'll answer your questions in private later, but
exactly
because I want to let people, go pee and stuff before the next thing. But let me just say to close, because probably this is the most important moral of infinity. And it comes from Richard Feynman, who I've just written a book about. Richard Feynman used to go up to people all the time and he'd say, "You won't believe what happened to me today. You won't believe what happened to me." And people would say, "What?" He'd say, "Absolutely nothing." Because we humans believe that everything that happens to us is special and significant. And Carl Sagan wrote beautifully about that in Demon Haunted World. That is much of the source of religion.
Oh, here we go again.
Everything that happens is unusual, and I expect the likelihood that Richard and I ever would have met, if you think about all the variables, the probability that we were in the same place at the same time, ate breakfast at the same, whatever, if you apply, it's zero. Okay? Every event that happens has small probability, but it happens. And then when it happens, if it's weird, if you dream 1,000,000 nights, and it's nonsense, but one night you dream that your friend is going to break his leg, and the next day he breaks his arm, you think, okay? So the really thing that the physics tells us about the universe is it's big. Rare events happen all the time, including life. And that doesn't mean it's special. Thank you very much.
What an idiot. What an absolute fool. I have nothing else to say. I mean, just watch this video again and just especially that last bit. I don't even want to... I mean, should we just listen to that last bit again? Yeah, go on. Let's listen to that again.
Your friend is going to breaks his arm.
Well, what he's talking about here is, coincidence, synchronicity, and the fact that people tend to, if they, like someone might dream about random things every night that don't happen. One day they just happen to dream about someone breaking their leg, and then they see significance in that. He's talking about synchronicity. Probably not even a word in his vocabulary, which is interesting, and I don't really see what it has to do with infinity at all, but it's just gone off on a weird tangent, and then he finishes off by saying how the universe is just not special at all. It's just some kind of...
Okay, so the really thing that the physics tells us about the universe is it's big.
Yeah, it's big.
Rare events happen all the time, including life.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean it's special. Thank you very much.
Oh, that doesn't mean it's special. The universe isn't special because Krauss says so. What a fool. Anyway, I'll make some more videos about this guy because he really deserves it.